I just got out of a Cinemark mystery movie, and the mystery movie was Jurassic World Rebirth, a lot bigger than expected. I was looking forward to this based on the trailers, everything that told me maybe we were going to go back to basics as opposed to do what we have been doing with the last few movies. What I loved about this film is that it did occasionally go back to basics. I think all in all, it's much more of a basically structured plot, which I like, as opposed to what we've had. There are a lot of characters, don't get me wrong, but you get those thrills, those chills, those massive set pieces, and some really fun, terrifying moments towards the end, which is what I wanted from Gareth Edwards. The problem is the build-up to those moments, the first 45 minutes specifically, they're trying to give you well-written characters with a well-written story and trying to get you to care. I just wasn't caring on the level that they needed to. I wasn't invested. So by the time we get to those thrills, it's good. It's a roller coaster ride, in the words of Martin Scorsese. I'm just not sure if it did what it needed to do to suck me in and make me feel like I cared about a lot of these characters. I do about some, but you know. And a lot of people's mentality, rightly so. If you give me dinosaur madness, I'm going to enjoy myself. And I did enjoy myself over the last 30 to 45 minutes, but the process to getting us to that point, and then those lulls in between, I'm not entirely sure if this came together. A lot to think about, obviously, but all in all, compared to that trailer, which I was a fan of, I think I'm disappointed.
Dr. Henry Loomis, this is Zora Bennett, our mission specialist.
Sorry, what mission?
So, funny story, I was supposed to take my friend to the early screening for this film, but I ended up seeing the mystery movie, and so we're not going. And he's like the world's biggest Jurassic Park fan, so I wanted his verdict as a massive fan of the franchise. And I'm a fan of the franchise. Obviously, the OG, it is what it is. One of the best blockbusters of all time. But I'm also a fan of the first Jurassic World. That one kind of Force Awakened this franchise back when that was cool, because I feel like that's not as cool now, and took a chance on getting us back into this world with bigger stakes, massive characters, and huge big-time actors, Chris Pratt, of course. Well, this time around, we're bringing back in this soft reboot the world that we had established at the end of Jurassic World Dominion. By the way, I am not the biggest fan of the two Jurassic World sequels for very different reasons, but Dominion was rough.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
The more I thought about that film, I'm just thinking, why don't we do a soft reboot? And that's essentially what they're doing with Rebirth, bringing in Gareth Edwards, a very fresh and distinct voice, a voice that has brought us magnificent grand-scale epics before. My brain automatically goes to Rogue One, but a lot of people liked the creator. I was disappointed in the story, but it was beautiful to look at. And honestly, if you forced me to pick an MVP of this movie, especially in the final 30 minutes, Gareth Edwards is kind of that guy. His distinct visual style works extremely well. There is one sequence that is so green screen heavy when they're in front of a giant waterfall and they're kind of scaling down a mountain where I said, no, that just looks really bad. But for the most part, Gareth Edwards brought that sense of scale. When we do get to those horrifying sequences during the end, he brings the sensibilities that I wanted him to, right? It felt like he wanted to make a smaller scale, lower budgeted Jurassic World with a horror flair to it, a creature feature, a monster movie, and that's essentially what this is, because a lot of these dinosaurs are combinations of multiple species, bioengineered, whatever word you want to use. And in the final portion, he gets to do that. As a whole, this plot is more than any Jurassic Park movie reminiscent to Jurassic Park 3. It feels very similar in that way, to where it attempts to be a little smaller scale, but in the grand scheme of things, this is fairly grand, especially by the time we get to the end. Now, the characters that we are introduced to, and we have to talk about them because they take up a large portion of this movie, especially in the beginning, are semi-interesting. Not really.
Boring.
You've got Scarlett Johansson, who is essentially our lead. It all kind of starts with her, but she's approached by Rupert Friend, who plays this, it's very obvious what kind of character he's playing, but he approaches her and says, we need to go get samples from these dinosaurs. And the idea of the world has almost lost interest in dinosaurs, very prevalent throughout this film. By the way, everything I'm telling you is really in like the first 5 minutes, so it's not really a spoiler, trust me. There's not much you can spoil with this movie because A lot of really obvious things that are happening. But he approaches her and says, I need you to assemble a team, and that team is going to go get the blood samples from these creatures that are kind of dinosaurs. Sort of. Thus comes in Jonathan Bailey, Mahershala Ali, and the rest of the team, who are clearly not as important as the big-name actors here. And that side of the story was far, to me at least, far less interesting than the small family that we meet. A dad, his two daughters, and the boyfriend. I do enjoy kind of what they did with the boyfriend. A nice amount of character development, which I actually appreciated, because other than that, it's really non-existent in this movie. But the family dynamic, for me, was a lot more relatable and interesting than everything going on over here. But both of these parties are the focus of the movie throughout the first 45 minutes, where you barely see a dinosaur, a creature, anything other than that opening sequence. The opening sequence was great, by the way. That got me right back into this world. I love the horrifying touch to the opening, and then that goes away for almost the next hour. I mean, we get a little bit in the midst of that, but the journey and trying to get to know these characters, I feel like the writer, bringing back the OG writer of Jurassic Park, okay, that sounds great in theory, I feel like they thought these characters were far more interesting than they actually ended up being, because the dialogue, it wasn't that good. And I hate to say it like that, because this film had so much potential, but I felt like everyone involved said, we want a little bit of the last three movies in there, so this is our group of scientists and killers and snipers and all these cool people, but then we want that touch of the OG Jurassic Park trilogy that's in there as well, and that's fun-ish, even though even those characters didn't have a lot that stood out about them, but that is far less significant than all the famous actors. Scarlett Johansson, Jonathan Bailey, Mahershala Ali, and while I like them, and Johansson was doing a really nice job, to strip away a lot of elements that interest me about those actors, like Mahershala Ali is one of the best actors working. His character in this movie is fine.
I mean, it's all right, like...
So we're trudging along. I'm kind of bored to tears. Some characters are making really dumb choices. I mean, the decision-making in this film is ridiculous. And understandably so. You've got to have that, right? In a horror movie, you've always got to have the dumb family that says, we're not moving, regardless of what demon's in that closet. It's the same thing here, right? It's like these characters have to make stupid decisions to get us in the position to entertain us. I get that. But it's pretty consistent throughout this film, and they continued to not surprise me along the way. I mean, I'm thinking the whole time, all right, this is about to happen, then you've got this, and here's the sequence from the trailer, boom, 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 and granted, it does get more fun as it goes, so I like a movie that progressively gets a little better, but it had a tall hill to climb from that opening 45 minutes, and we're talking almost half of the movie, folks. I just was not invested whatsoever, and I was frankly a little frustrated that they took so many things that didn't work about the last two movies. And then, finally, we start getting some dinosaur action, and this is what Edwards does best as a director. He builds up the intensity, puts our characters in devastating-ish situations, and kind of haunts us to our core all throughout his filmography, but with dinosaurs and these versions of the dinosaurs that are left, that is fascinating. And so once we actually get to what I was looking forward to in this movie, that was really cool. That being said, I still didn't really care about the characters, and they try to hit some big, grand, emotional arcs and beats at the end, and I give the movie kudos for doing a couple of fun things in the last 30 minutes, but we've got a lot of movie before that, and it frankly wasn't enough to get me motivated about the ending. Now, when the ending comes, it was really fun, and again, that last portion, really the final act, gave me what I was looking forward to. And if you have the patience to get there as a hardcore fan and a moviegoer, then you're going to enjoy that as well. My issue with this film is everything really leading up to that and just not being super interested in the characters. And this script is so generic because I used to say, I don't want the focus to be on the humans. Then I see a movie like Godzilla Minus One, I'm thinking, that's almost all humans. Maybe I just want a good script. Maybe that's all I'm looking for in a movie like this. And with all of the visual elements and some of the great-looking dinosaurs throughout this film, I did not get a good script. And that's the most important thing. So I've got to know, are you looking forward to Rebirth like I was? Would you like to see a ranking of the Jurassic Park movies? We can definitely do that. And if you want to drop a like or share this with your family, your grandma maybe? And Rebirth taps into that classic Jurassic Park vibe, simplifying the narrative and attempting to amplify the thrills reminiscent of Jurassic Park 3. The issues mostly spawn from an overlong build-up that does little to get us invested, as some of the emotional beats feel so ridiculously telegraphed. The final act is exactly what many franchise fans will be looking for, but it stumbles on its journey to get us there, and thus I was disappointed with this one at the end of the day. I expected a lot more from our characters, from our story, which is way more prominent than the thrills themselves. Themselves? Plural? No, singular. But I think a lot of people will have some fun, especially with that ending. And there is a cute little dinosaur that they try to keep shoehorning into the movie, but it was cute. I'll give it that. I like cute stuff. All right, thanks for watching. See you in my next review.